You have been completely lied to about what wealth actually looks like. At 22, my friends genuinely thought I was a broke loser living in a dump. But behind closed doors, I was secretly building a $100,000 empire using 20 invisible habits. Today, I am giving you the exact blueprint. Society has completely brainwashed you into believing that wealth looks like a leased luxury car and a trendy downtown apartment. What if I told you that true wealth actually looks like a torn couch, a $3 aluminum pot, and a cracked windshield? Welcome to MyWiseWallet. If you are ready to stop faking success and start building a real financial empire, please hit that subscribe button right now to support the channel so I can keep bringing these brutal truths to you. Let me take you back to when I was 22 years old. I was sitting alone on the bare floor of a cramped studio apartment that I rented for exactly $730 a month. I chose it simply because it was the absolute cheapest door with a working lock I could find. I was quietly eating a bowl of white rice and black beans that I had just cooked in a dented Goodwill pot. Behind me sat a secondhand couch with a massive ugly tear in the cushion that I strategically hid under a clearance blanket from Target. Across the room, a 32-inch refurbished TV flickered in the dark. To my closest friends and coworkers, I was the broke guy who was struggling just to keep his head above water. But as I sat on that cold floor, I pulled out my phone, opened my brokerage app, and stared at the number glowing on the screen. $61,412. Within 2 short years, that exact same account would silently cross $100,000. I wasn't broke at all. I was secretly building an invisible empire while everyone else around me was drowning in consumer debt just to look rich. Today, I am pulling back the curtain to show you exactly how I built it. But before we break down the exact mechanics of this invisible empire, I need to look you in the eye and aggressively strip away the excuses your brain is already forming. I know you are actively searching for the hidden privilege, the lucky break, or the secret catch that gives you permission to say this won't work for you. Let me kill that comforting narrative right now. Nobody died and left me a trust fund. I did not stumble into a miraculous crypto lottery, and I certainly didn't sell a tech startup to Silicon Valley. The unvarnished reality is that I crossed my graduation stage carrying roughly $9,000 in student loan debt. My starting salary was an incredibly average $52,000 a year at a mundane corporate job I found by nervously handing out resumes at a crowded college career fair. I am giving you these exact numbers to completely remove your safety net. If I could build this massive momentum on a totally ordinary income, starting below zero, then you absolutely can too. What separated me from everyone else wasn't luck. It was 20 incredibly boring, completely unsexy daily habits. And we are going to master them together right now. To make those 20 habits actually work, we have to start by accepting a hard, uncomfortable truth. Relying on human willpower to build wealth is a complete myth. If you wait until the end of the month to save whatever happens to be left over, you will inevitably fail. By the time the 30th rolls around, you are mentally exhausted, you are stressed from work, and your brain desperately craves a reward. You do not need more discipline, you need ironclad system architecture. The absolute foundation of my invisible empire was habit number 1: ruthless, non-negotiable automation. On the 15th and the 30th of every single month, the exact day after my paycheck cleared, $750 vanished from my checking account. It was automatically transferred straight into my employer's 401k and my Roth IRA before I could even log in and look at it. Because I never saw that money, it never became part of my psychological spending reality. I purposefully and artificially restricted my own lifestyle, forcing my brain to rapidly adapt to living on the roughly $2,100 that remained after taxes. To manage what was left over, I deployed habit number 20, the zero-based budget. Before the new month even started, every single dollar was assigned a highly specific job. Rent, groceries, internet, gas. Every penny was given a mission, taking my unallocated funds down to absolute zero. Most people look at a strict budget and see a suffocating cage that restricts their freedom. I looked at my budget and saw a precise map that guaranteed my ultimate escape. When you give your money explicit directions, it obeys, but when you leave it unassigned, it wanders off into meaningless impulse purchases. By automating the investments and assigning every remaining dollar, I completely removed the burden of decision-making. Decisions are exactly where people stumble, and by taking them out of the equation, my wealth started compounding silently in the background without requiring a single ounce of daily willpower. Once that automated system was locked into place, I had to aggressively protect it by slaying the 3 massive financial dragons that silently bleed the American middle class dry. Society aggressively pushes you to upgrade your lifestyle the exact second your first real paycheck clears, starting directly with where you live. Habit number 4 was my stubborn, non-negotiable refusal to let my rent cross 25% of my take-home pay. While traditional financial blogs comfortably preach a 30% limit, I demanded a much wider safety margin to fuel my investments. That is exactly why I forced myself into that bare-bones, $730 studio instead of the sprawling, $1,400 apartments with trendy brick walls and granite countertops that my friends were leasing. Let us actually pause and look at the brutal, life-changing math behind that specific choice. That monthly gap of roughly $500 between my rent and my friend's rent isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. If you take that $500 and diligently invest it at an 8% return over 20 years, it transforms into roughly $295,000. A trendy kitchen island and an in-unit washer are simply not worth forfeiting $250,000 of my future freedom. Next came the single biggest cultural trap designed to keep young people perpetually broke. Habit number 5 was driving an $8,200 used 2014 Honda Civic that I bought entirely in cash, complete with a cracked windshield that I intentionally ignored. Meanwhile, the average new car payment in this country has ballooned to a completely insane $767 every single month. When you factor in the mandatory full coverage insurance and dealership maintenance, the average person is incinerating over $10,000 a year just to look successful while sitting at a red light. My total annual car cost was a fraction of that, because my only requirement was an engine that started every morning and got me to work safely. If you take that $10,000 annual difference and invest it over 30 years, it explodes into $1.29 million. I really want you to process the weight of that reality. Signing a 7-year loan for a flashy new car is not a flex to be proud of. It is a profound financial tragedy that literally robs you of your millionaire status. The final dragon to slay was the slow, invisible, daily leak of convenience dining. Habit number 3 was treating my kitchen like an absolute utility rather than a 5-star restaurant. Every single Sunday afternoon, I sacrificed 2 hours to aggressively batch-cook giant, cheap portions of rice, black beans, and roasted chicken. By eating those identical, boring meals 12 to 14 times a week, my total grocery bill plummeted to a ridiculously low $220 a month. I was not ordering overpriced delivery on Tuesday nights. I was not swiping my card for spontaneous $15 office salads, and I was absolutely not subsidizing the local restaurant industry. Housing, transportation, and food are where the real battle for your financial life is won or lost. By refusing to blindly follow the crowd on these big 3 expenses, I wasn't living a life of miserable deprivation. I was actively buying back decades of my future. Having secured those massive wins on housing, cars, and food, I realized I still had to build a psychological fortress to protect my remaining cash from a modern economy specifically designed to bleed us dry. We are constantly being hunted by brilliant corporate marketers and highly paid psychologists whose entire job is to remove every single ounce of friction between your momentary desires and your wallet. To fight back and protect my future, I adopted habit number 2. I tracked every single dollar I spent by hand in a $3 physical notebook. Every night before bed, I sat in silence for 5 minutes, forcing myself to write down exactly what I had purchased that day. Yes, it felt absolutely obsessive and slightly crazy at the beginning. But physically writing it down forces your brain to process the emotional weight of a purchase a second time, completely exposing the phantom spending and small leaks you usually ignore. Habit number 9 was the brutal enforcer for that notebook, the cash envelope system. Every 2 weeks, I pulled exactly $200 in physical cash from the ATM to cover all of my discretionary spending. When that paper money was gone, my spending completely stopped, with absolutely no exceptions and no borrowing from the next week. Physical cash triggers a biological pain response in your brain that swiping a sleek piece of plastic intentionally bypasses. I then started making what I call frugal swaps, completely changing my relationship with ownership. Habit number 7 was utilizing the local public library for thousands of free books and audiobooks, realizing that I didn't need to hoard physical items on a dusty shelf just to extract the knowledge inside them. Habit number 8 was brewing my own coffee in a $12 French press every single morning, allowing myself only one purchased coffee on Fridays as a highly anticipated reward. Skipping that daily $6 latte isn't just a tired personal finance cliche. Invested over 20 years, that small daily habit is worth roughly $62,000. Habit number 10 meant I permanently canceled the overpriced commercial gym membership that most people pay for but barely use. I bought a used pull-up bar for $15. an $8 jump rope, and ran on the pavement outside for free. A $50 monthly gym fee, compounded over 25 years, is $55,000, and I preferred to keep that wealth for myself. Habit number 11 was aggressively calling every single utility, phone, and insurance provider once a year. I politely threatened to switch companies, negotiating my recurring bills down to save hundreds of dollars for just 30 minutes of uncomfortable phone time. Finally, I had to build a digital moat to defend my mind from constant temptation. Habit number 12 was furnishing my entire apartment strictly through secondhand thrift stores and online marketplaces, flatly refusing to go into debt for brand new furniture. Habit number 13 was implementing the 24-hour rule for absolutely any purchase over $30. If I saw something I wanted, I forced myself to wait one full day. Almost every single time, that burning emotional urgency completely evaporated overnight. Habits 14 and 18 were about intentionally blinding the enemy. I ruthlessly unsubscribed from every single promotional email the second it hit my inbox, recognizing that every coupon is just a psychological trigger designed to make you buy things you never planned on buying. I deleted every single shopping app off my phone, forcing myself to log in manually on a clunky laptop browser if I actually needed to order something. I even kept a cheap, refurbished phone for years instead of upgrading, completely ignoring the trap that last year's technology was somehow obsolete. By actively injecting just 30 seconds of annoying friction into my daily life, I successfully defended my invisible empire from an industry built to steal it. With those defensive walls firmly in place to protect my cash, it was finally time to shift to the offensive strategy and build the engine that actually generated the wealth. Saving money only keeps you from going broke, but investing is what actually buys your absolute freedom. Habit number 15 was capturing every single penny of my employer's 401k match from my very first day on the job. By contributing just 5% of my modest $52,000 salary, my company handed me an additional $2,600 every single year. Let me be completely blunt about this reality. Employer matching is literally free money. And if you are not capturing all of it, you are voluntarily walking into your boss's office and asking for a pay cut. Habit number 16 was maxing out my Roth IRA every single year using that automated transfer system we already built. Every month, that money was funneled directly into a single aggressively boring total stock market index fund. I need to demystify the stock market for you right now, because the financial industry desperately wants you to think it is incredibly complicated. I did not day trade. I did not frantically analyze stock charts, and I absolutely ignored the crypto influencers screaming on the internet. Index fund investing is the single most effective wealth-building strategy available to an ordinary person precisely because it requires zero financial genius, zero market timing, and zero emotional stress. I simply bought a tiny slice of the entire American economy every month, completely ignored the terrifying news cycles, and let the relentless math of compound interest do all the heavy lifting. Habit number 17 ensured I never had to sell those investments in a panic by keeping a strict emergency fund safely parked in a high-yield savings account. While traditional brick-and-mortar banks were insulting their customers with fraction of a percent interest rates, my high-yield account paid me hundreds of dollars a year in passive income for the exact same level of risk. Habit number 19 was my secret accelerant. I ruthlessly invested every single financial windfall that ever crossed my path. Whether it was a $1,900 tax refund, $50 in a birthday card from a relative, or a random freelance check, I completely refused to engage in the dangerous psychological trap of mental accounting. A dollar from the IRS compounds the exact same way as a hard-earned dollar from your paycheck. I ripped the fun money, labeled off those unexpected checks, and poured them directly into my brokerage account as pure investment fuel. Let me give you the radically transparent breakdown of exactly how this engineered system hit $100,800 by age 24. My 401k contributions plus the free employer match accounted for roughly $31,000 of that total. My Roth IRA contributions added another $15,000. The extra investments from those windfalls and my intense budgeting piled on another $16,000. The stock market returns across those accounts handed me roughly $12,000 in pure, unearned profit. I had $7,000 sitting safely in high-yield cash and about $4,000 from selling old items and side hustles. The remaining balance was just the silent, unstoppable snowball effect of compounding taking over my financial life. Now, looking at those extreme financial mechanics, I know exactly what argument is forming in the back of your mind. You are probably thinking that I wasted the absolute best years of my youth living like a miserable hermit in a dark room just to watch a high score go up on a banking app. I need to aggressively challenge that narrative right now because it is a complete lie. I did not stop living. I simply stopped equating a good life with spending money. I still traveled, but instead of putting a luxury resort vacation on a high-interest credit card, I took an unforgettable road trip to the Smoky Mountains, pitched a tent, and spent exactly $312. I still hung out with my friends constantly, but we played pickup basketball at the park and cooked elaborate meals in my tiny kitchen instead of splitting overpriced restaurant checks. The most incredibly memorable nights of my early 20s happened sitting in cheap living rooms with great people. They did not happen standing in an overcrowded, noisy downtown bar shouting over terrible music after paying an $80 tab. I actively sought out the cheap or free version of every single good thing society had to offer. What I discovered completely changed my perspective on happiness forever. The inexpensive version is almost always just as fulfilling, but it comes completely devoid of the crushing financial anxiety that follows a weekend you couldn't actually afford. I absolutely did not sacrifice my youth. I brilliantly insulated it from the suffocating stress of consumer debt that was secretly drowning almost everyone else around me. The only reason I was able to happily enjoy that frugal life without feeling deprived was because I possessed the ultimate superpower, financial literacy. If you try to force yourself to live this way through sheer willpower alone, you will eventually break down and quit. But when you actually understand the underlying math, these incredibly boring habits transform from miserable chores into an unstoppable wealth-building machine. Let us look together at the terrifyingly beautiful reality of hitting $100,000 at age 24. If I completely walked away right then, never added another single penny to that account, and just let it sit at a historical 10% average return, that money would magically become $3.4 million by the time I turned 65. If I just continue to add an incredibly modest $500 a month to that fire, the portfolio swells to over $7 million. When you truly comprehend that compounding curve, your entire worldview permanently shifts. You unlock a mental framework I call the shadow price. When an artist you like comes to town, that $280 concert ticket isn't actually $280. To a financially literate mind, that exact ticket represents $6,100 of your future wealth actively stolen from your older self. When you realize that taking 10 minutes to pack a lunch every day instead of buying an overpriced deli sandwich is literally worth $142,000 in retirement, you don't need discipline anymore. The staggering math simply compels you to act. Financial literacy is the secret weapon that makes everyday sacrifice feel like an absolute superpower. Armed with that superpower of financial literacy, hitting $100,000 was a massive victory, but I soon realized it was merely the first mile marker on a much more dangerous road. The frugal habits that built your foundation in your 20s will absolutely not protect you from the highly sophisticated traps waiting in your 30s. Next comes the silent, devastating killer of lifestyle inflation the second you get your first major promotion. Next comes the overwhelming psychological pressure to finance a luxury car because society whispers that you finally deserve it. Then comes the most catastrophic trap of all, signing an over-leveraged 30-year mortgage simply because a bank eagerly told you that you were approved for it. You can flawlessly execute everything we discussed today, and still watch your wealth completely evaporate by 35 if you walk blindly into this next minefield. I could not see those invisible traps when I was 22, but I see them clearly now. If you want the map to survive the dangerous decades ahead, stay with me on this journey, and let's keep building this empire together. Looking back at that 22-year-old sitting on the floor of a cheap studio apartment, I realized the most valuable thing I built wasn't just a six-figure bank account balance. It was absolute ownership of my own life. The profound lesson hidden underneath all of these unsexy habits is that the ultimate financial flex in modern society is not showing people what you can afford to buy. The ultimate flex is having the quiet, unshakable power to simply decline. True wealth is never measured by the square footage of your leased apartment or the luxury badge on the car sitting in your driveway. True wealth is measured by the sheer amount of time you control, the absolute peace of mind you hold when an unexpected emergency strikes, and the freedom to walk away from a toxic situation without panicking. Every single dollar you intentionally redirect away from a meaningless consumer impulse and into an investment account is quite literally a piece of your future that you are buying back from the system. You absolutely do not need a six-figure tech salary to start taking your life back. You simply need to fundamentally change your relationship with the money that is already flowing through your hands. Your practical application starts tomorrow morning. Do not try to completely overhaul your entire financial life overnight, because relying on a sudden burst of motivation almost always leads to burnout. I want you to pick just one invisible habit to execute this week. Buy a cheap physical notebook and track your expenses for exactly 3 days to see where your money actually wanders off to. Log into your bank portal right now and set up a tiny $20 automatic transfer to a savings account that you won't even notice is gone. Cancel just one recurring subscription that you completely forgot you were paying for. The compounding curve does not care if your starting number is incredibly small. It only cares that you actually force yourself to start. Now I want to hear your perspective on this. What is one completely boring money habit you currently practice that other people might think is weird, but actually saves you a ton of cash? Please drop your answer down in the comments below so our community can read it and learn from your strategy. And if you found genuine value in this conversation, please hit that subscribe button to support the channel so I have the motivation to keep bringing you these deep, honest financial breakdowns.